Thank you. Now, we record the sessions just in case anybody misses a session and they can watch the recording. We absolutely prefer people to be in the live session so we can have that interaction and those discussions, but we understand some people may miss one, so they can catch up the recording. Also, you can go back and look at anything that's said, re-watch case studies and those sort of things at any point. We'll make those recordings available to you in the learning management system, which we'll take you through shortly. I do give a content warning. We do analyse some road crash scenes, nothing overly graphic, but just trying to understand what went wrong and what we could do to lessen the severity or prevent the incident. Loretta, please introduce yourself.
Morena. My name's Loretta Irado, training coordinator at Safe System Solutions. You would have received emails from me, so thanks for being here and reading my emails and clicking on the link and so forth. If you do have any issues, we always say, log out, log back in. With Zoom, there's, sometimes if you've got your camera on, you might lose some connection as well, so perhaps try turning that off. But if you have any sort of issues with the LMS as well, I did send an email in regards to our learning management system. Please reach out. The email there, training@safesystemsolutions.com.au. Feel free to just reach out and I'll do my best to assist. And I'll be here in the background with Ken, sort of, managing the chat and the waiting room. And you'll hear more from me later in the session in regards to the learning management system.
Thanks, Loretta. And yes, Loretta is your go-to with anything associated with the admin logistics management of the course. And now a little bit of Zoom keeping. Really, I think everybody's an expert at Zoom these days, but you can happily use the chat function, and I encourage that. A little bit of chat behind the scenes is always good. If you can raise your hand and if you want to talk, then that just controls things a little bit. And try and keep yourself on mute when you're not talking, just so we don't get the background dogs barking and colleagues shouting at each other and the like. And you can chat to everybody in the chat so everybody can see it, or you could just direct it to Loretta, which would be host and panelists, and she can deal with that. But I think you all know how to use Zoom very well, so let's carry on. As mentioned, my name's Ken Beer, Principal Engineer at Safe System Solutions, and my contact details are there, a little QR code to my LinkedIn there. If any of you want to connect on LinkedIn, I try to share Safe System content, bit of a focus on the engineering of the road and roadside and street environment, but other stuff in the road safety space as well. I asked my colleague Paul Tierney, a friend of mine that I worked with in the Victorian government at one point, to present the third module. The reason for that is Paul is a road safety, safe system communication specialist and has been doing that for his career. And I always loved working with Paul and just his take on how messages can be framed and how we can meet target audience expectations and the like. So I asked Paul to come in and facilitate the third module, which will have quite a bit of sort of interaction discussion, you presenting back some of the little exercises we're going to give you. And it'll be a great opportunity to delve really into some of that, the really in-depth theory side of the comms and engagement and marketing side of road safety. I'll be giving you a lot of the safe system fundamentals and delving into those areas. I'm a bit rough around the edges sometimes with the way it's communicated, and so we can refine that a bit better with your assistance, and Paul will be able to do that as well. And I'll put the contact details there. Feel free to reach out at any point. Loretta, learning management system. Now, I did notice lots of people have been introducing themselves in the learning management system, which is wonderful. We're not going to do the thing where we go around and everybody says who they are, just to save some time. The learning management system, where people have put that introduction, is our way to do that. You will be put in some little groups in module 3, and so you'll meet a few others if you don't know them. But what's the learning management system? How do people get access?
So I did send an email with the link. So yeah, like you said, I think a lot of people have introduced themselves. So thank you for that. Learning Management System has all the content for this course. So I guess you won't be able to pass the course unless you have access to the LMS. So ensure that you've tried to log in. If you can't find the email, sometimes it goes into your junk folder or spam folder. So please check that as well. But if not, please yell out to me and I'll reset your password or look into it if there's anything wrong. But usually it's a quick fix. So yeah, please just reach out if you can't access the LMS.
Great, thank you. Now, just to keep you engaged, I know your temptation to do the emails, write that little media release on the side, these sort of bits and pieces. We'll give out some prizes. I'll ask questions, and those who are answering in the chat will be a chance to win a prize. And maybe next session, Loretta will do a little bit of trivia for anybody who arrives early. This session, I had a few little cartoons scrolling there, but we'll do some just general knowledge trivia or road trivia. Who knows what it'll be. Prizes will be available if you arrive a bit early before the next two sessions. Now, how do we get the prizes to you? Well, hopefully you got your little welcome pack with very, very important stuff in it, very important information, edible information. So we'll do the same. We'll send you out a little pack with any prizes you've won along the journey. Now, we are making you do a few things. It's not just a sit back, relax course. We're going to get you to do stuff. Well, arriving to the live webinars, we want you to be at 2 of the 3 at least. We'd like you to be at 3 of the 3, but if you can only make 2, that's okay. You're going to watch the recording and you're going to do all the work. You need to complete the set tasks. So we've got some quizzes, and we've got one assignment and an 80% pass mark on the quizzes. So a little bit of a high competency benchmark, but I'm pretty sure you'll be all right. Just solid principles of the SAFE system. Okay, so any questions associated with the admin logistics, the running of the course, either type them in the chat or pop your hand up now, and we will address those. But Loretta, I think we'll start with a little poll. I like the fact that some of the people putting their introductions into the learning management system told us sort of how long they've been in the road safety space or doing things associated with road safety specifically. But I thought it'd be nice to just get that spread across the group to see where people are at. So hopefully a poll will pop up on your screen.
Just having issues actually. Are you able to access the poll? Because I just tested it and it did work, but it could be accessible on your screen perhaps.
Yep, I've got. Okay, yep, got that. Poll's up and running. So hopefully that'll pop up on your screen, and we're just getting an indication of the level of sort of experience within the group associated with road safety specifically. I know we can say, well, road safety was a sort of aspect of what I was doing, but we'll looking for a bit more, really road safety was the focus of my work. Okay. And I'm going to end that poll, and I'm going to share the results with you just so you can see also what we've got here. So we've got quite a few people in the early phases. Maybe some wanted to go earlier than that, but we don't seem to have a 0 to 6 months. 6 months to a year or less will go, or 1 to 5 years. Okay, so fairly, sort of newish to road safety, but a lot of people, no doubt, with the fundamentals, and then a few people who have been in there for many years. Okay, that's great. That helps me a little bit, and probably helps you in a bit of understanding of where the group is at. Okay, now I don't think there are any no questions have come in around the management logistics of the course. That means I can jump straight into some content. Okay, so we're here to have a bit of a chat about the communicating of safe system principles. And I think that's yeah, so what I've done is taken some of the course content from the safe system courses I run for engineers, road designers, traffic engineers, maintenance staff, signal operations, the engineering side of it, and often sort of crash investigators as well. And I'll be using that as foundational information to make sure we're on the same page. But I've overlaid it with a lot of, I suppose, looking behind the scenes at how communication of some of these messages has been tried, and I suppose opening it up for discussion with your expertise on ways that we may be able to communicate that, or we may be able to get people to do what we want and we know is good practice, and get that change management happening. But anyway, we'll get into that. To start things off, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of language. This is very sort of entry-level basic stuff, and some of you will have been no doubt the leaders of a lot of change of language use in New Zealand. But I am going to ask you also a little bit about any other terms that are used that you would like not to be used, or terms that, yeah, you're trying to sort of push. But the one that's a sort of very basic one is that we don't really refer to incidents on the road where people are killed or seriously injured as accidents. We use the term crashes, and that is, to represent that this is something that wasn't an act of God, and nothing could ever be done about this. We will refer to them crash, collision, or something along those lines. We don't talk about the road toll. We talk about the number of New Zealanders killed on the road, or the deaths and serious injuries of New Zealanders. And you had a very good campaign around that, which some of you are probably the architects of. So well done. Congratulations on that. There's some changes that have been around for a while. Instead of talking speed cameras, talking safety cameras, reinforcing their purpose, their objective. And that's been the same with some other engineering features, I suppose. We talk about things like raised safety platforms, safety barriers, really reinforcing the purpose of this device, rather than talking potentially about a crash barrier or something like that, which isn't as directly aligned with that end outcome we're looking for, the safety aspect of it. One down here, I'm going to jump down. I'll get my little pen going. I'll jump down here before I go up to this one with lots of stuff written. This is one I'd be interested in your feedback on it. I always talk about the community's roads and streets. There is a tendency for road authorities to talk about, we're not going to let that happen on our roads, or this is our road to manage, or our road to, we've made this decision on our road. I always like to talk about the roads and streets as the community's asset. It's public asset, and it gives them some ownership of what happens on that, as well as instead of being able to just point at the road authority, the local government, or Waka Kotahi, and say, you should be managing this. Yes, but the ownership of what happens on roads and streets is a community issue. Okay, so these terms all in here are different sort of terms that get bandied about with different thoughts on what they actually are and what they mean. So Vision Zero is what I like to talk about as it's a vision. It's an aspirational statement. Yes, it can be quantified a little bit more, and there can be specifics around it. So Vision Zero gives us that big picture, and then the safe system is really the operational arm of Vision Zero. It's what will be done, what are the principles we need to deploy, and what are the ways that we can do that. Sustainable safety is a sort of European term that encompasses both Vision Zero and safe system into an entity, and it also Well, yeah, it throws a few other little bits and pieces, but essentially, those you can all think about in the same vein, but the same, but they're slightly at different levels. One network framework and movement in place, which are New Zealand terms, or movement in place is a fairly international term. One network framework is a New Zealand term, but that's a sort of strategic planning of the entire road network, and it encompasses far more than just safe system or safety aspects. It's about thinking about what is the purpose of road, how do we make areas more livable, encourage active transport and more environmentally friendly, which bit of road, what is its purpose? And there's been categorization of the New Zealand road network in these categories, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about later. Safety in design, you may have heard of. So safety in design is a philosophy and a methodology to ensure the safety of anybody that works on a road, be that constructs a road, that maintains a road, that decommissions a road or a street. So that is more an occupational health and safety thing. It's about workers. Where it delves into the general public using the road and street asset that's been built, that's not generally put into safety and design. We jump up and down and say it should be, but that's a definition thing of what safety and design is. So those are there. I'll put this other one out there before I then ask you to tell me other terms that you're passionate about or you're talking about. I'll put this one out there where there is a bit of movement and people talking about or insisting on the use of the term people that ride bikes rather than cyclists, or people that walk or scoot or wheel as opposed to using the term pedestrians. They sort of see the word cyclist as a very clinical term that dehumanizes that's a person that's actually riding there. That's not a thing that needs to be managed and corralled. Now, I will throughout this course use the term cyclist and pedestrian and motorcyclist and car for that matter. As opposed to sort of talking about the people aspects of it. This is where I need to lean on your expertise and your wealth of knowledge. I'm sort of an engineer who really just thinks a little bit that way. Do I need to change my language on that? And I'll welcome your thoughts on that as well. But what other now do this by either typing it in the chat or just popping up your hand. What other things are we talking about in New Zealand that we're trying to change language and have more appropriate language, or things that you really resonate with you when they're mentioned? Right. Okay. So Bianca's made a really good point around the maintenance management of the program and asset management and ownership and the like, and then that some of the community probably aren't willing to take that on as ownership. So yeah, good point. Killed on their journey is an interesting one. I think the violence of that should be front and center. So that's that sort of killed on their journey is a very vivid statement. So that's a good one. Bianca.
Hello. Thanks for having us again. Really enjoy these courses. Really, really interesting to see all of this stuff come through. So we use most of the same language, and obviously that kind of take on our roads. It's been a bit of a journey ever since launching our overarching Road to Zero campaign. We took a lot of learnings of how far our audiences were ready to jump to fully understanding safe system and embedding the principles in our comms and our marketing. So it has been really interesting where we kind of use these as our end goal. We really make a point around crash and road toll, making sure we're not using accident or referring to road toll, etc. And again, people first, so things like cyclists and stuff. But again, I think the biggest takeaway for us has been time and place and audience led for us as well. So where we can For example, we're doing a story on our social media channels about people cycling or people walking. We'll use that, but if we're referring to a cyclist road code, we'll say cyclist road code because that's the technical piece. So it's been really interesting to see how far, and I love the Safe System Solutions safety snippets and seeing the language that comes through on those on LinkedIn as well. So I don't think you're just an engineer. I think you know what you're doing. Obviously, you're here and teaching us stuff. So no, that was just kind of our take on things.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. Many years being involved in it. But please, with any of those Safe System snippets that you see out there, if you think language could be improved, please tell us. We're always looking for that feedback. But thank you, Bianca. There you go. Easy as that to get involved in the conversation, everyone. So thank you. And let's give out a few prizes to all of our people who have been making wonderful comments either in the chat or Bianca for popping up the hand. So I'm just going to catch up. Maybe Loretta, where are we at with any points in the chat?
Yeah. So Dan made a point talking about killed on their journey.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was a good one. And there was another one in there I see around the use of acronyms. Oh my gosh, we just love acronyms, don't we? It is absolutely incredible. And to the point where, especially when you've been a practitioner in this space for a long time, probably at the end of not having, communicating it as your focus, but you're there trying to deliver projects in this, it is just, you don't even think you're talking about an acronym. You just roll it out. So that's, I think, a great one where obviously comms and engagement can be helping and saying, no, we don't actually know what that means, or the public may not know what that means. Any other ones there, Loretta?
Quite a few. So yeah, we covered the acronym there. But yeah, quite a few good points that have been made. Also great to see a lot of international recognition for NZ's bold road safety ads. Well done, Waka Katahi. I'll try to be more conscious of avoiding our possessive sense. And I was watching Hot Fuzz at the weekend, and the main character explains why they don't say accident. It was a great way to learn. Yeah.
Well, that's right. I think there's some amazing learnings from ways we can get people to learn, and I think some of the New Zealand stuff is really cutting edge, world leading, and I certainly drag out a lot of your stuff when I'm around the world talking about Safe System and trying to get people skilled up in that space. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Love the interaction. Love that everybody's popping it out to everyone as well. So
I think Tony might want to make a go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find the reaction thing in my screen.
Anyway, I saw your hand go up.
Thank you, Loretta. I just wanted to say that whole word zero, is quite triggering for people, as I'm sure everyone on the call has experienced. And it does tend to lead to that whole conversation about, whether it's realistic. So yeah, road to zero, vision zero, it's that word zero, isn't it? That's problematic. So interested to hear, I'm speaking from a Waka Kotahi perspective, but yeah, interested to hear if others are still actively talking Vision Zero and Road to Zero, or stepping back from that a little.
Tony, you've made it such a really important point, and I should have definitely included it in here. Maybe I didn't include it because I'm torn a little bit as well, as I'm sure all of you are, where I find often with audiences, they just will glaze over, tune out. This is ridiculous. This is impossible. Never going to happen. And I've lost the ability to sort of achieve more minor things that I'm trying to achieve. However, I can see the major downfall in not having zero as our objective, in that it just starts to erode that, and just say, well, it's acceptable that some people have to be killed and seriously injured to get fresh milk and to move around the goods and people of New Zealand, and so yeah. I'm a bit more, actually, funnily enough, I'm a bit more rigid with the engineers and designers on zero as a philosophy and a way of thinking, because so often in the engineering and design and management of a road system, you've got a choice of sort of essentially making something safe or safer. And it's a lot easier to make things safe. Oh my God, you can make things, it's so easy. Put up a warning sign, put up improve the lighting a bit. Yeah, we've made it safer, right? And everybody feels good about themselves, but is it going to get us that step change we need? And so that's why I'm a bit more rigid there. If I'm just trying to get a speed limit reduction with a local community or something like that, it's a slightly different story, and I won't harp on about that. But a fundamental for me is about, I often compromise with people to say, okay, well, let's just get road and street transport in line with any other form of transport in terms of rates and death and serious injury, in line with rail, aviation, shipping, right? Just get us in line with that. And that essentially is very close to our Vision Zero objectives anyway. Like we are just manifestly way out of proportion of any other movement of people and goods. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like the safe versus safer discussion has been happening. Okay, good. Let's continue this conversation as we go through some case studies, some examples. I will be probably reiterating to a lot of you some of the fundamentals of the safe system, but I do welcome your input on things that resonate, things that don't resonate in terms of language. And I have told a number of you in the past about the sort of evolution of the safe system in Australia and New Zealand and where it came from. And essentially, let me take you back in time, back into to around 2004, and we were sitting around the Austroads boardroom. Austroads being sort of that collection of New Zealand and Australian road authorities that set different guidelines and do research and those sort of things as a collective, rather than each jurisdiction doing their own thing when they're overlapping and they're doing the same thing. So we're sitting around there talking about the sustainable safety, safe system style things that Europe's been doing and how we can take that and adapt it to the Australian, New Zealand environment, and sort of coming up with different forms of diagrams. And we came up with this, which was essentially that human tolerance to physical force at the center. How much force can the human body take before it breaks? Right now, this was just a massive shift in the way you think about the design, management, and operation of a road environment. Like, to have that at the center was just like boggling people's mind at the time. To be honest, it still boggles some people's mind, but we'll get to that. But that's at the center of how to manage this network. Then we have the levers of the speed, vehicles, and roads and roadsides. And you'll notice in there it does say safer rather than safe. Safe vehicles, safe speed. So we're in 2004 here, so some evolving. But essentially that was the safe system. That was it. Circle around that that's the system. And then the room sort of split with some people saying, no, you've forgotten like the critical part of the system, the human. The person that's operating the vehicles, that's walking, that's cycling within this system, they have to be safe. They have to be alert and compliant and safe, and then we'll have a safe system. And then you had the other part of the room saying, well, they're not going to be. They're not going to be alert. They're not going to be compliant. They're going to do stupid things. They're going to take risks. That's what humans do. So we need to create this impenetrable system that is designed for that. And the argy-bargy continued, and eventually, because compromise, the square was put around it, and this little alert and compliant road users added there as this sort of foundation of it all, okay? And then there were some inputs into the system. Yeah, okay, that didn't last too long due to that alert and compliant, because I've done a few hundred in-depth fatal crash investigations in my life. every single one of them, somebody was not alert or compliant. It's pretty easy to blame somebody. That's like the easiest thing to do when there's a death or serious injury. But what do we sort of achieve by that? Okay, from a legislative perspective, somebody, gets attributed blame or the like, and then there's, the court system. But are we going to get improvements to the system when just going, well, they need to behave? So anyway, we evolved from that. Lots of diagrams popped up, everybody producing their own circle and own little tweaks and bits and pieces on this. And you'll probably recognize a few in there that have been New Zealand foundations over time. Yeah, that one, you got this one. So let's look at where we're at. And now forgive me if I say something that is politically incorrect at these. No, I don't mean it like politically incorrect, but I mean politically not what's happening exactly at this stage with New Zealand because of your changes in government, things that are happening. But I'm still going to talk to this because I love the way that this is presented and the language that's being used here. It's on the surface, you go, oh, yeah, this looks good. But when you really know Safe System and you really understand what we're trying to achieve, there's just elegance in some of the wording here. And I use this all over the place for a couple of these particular principles, which to me they just grab what we're trying to achieve. So congratulations if you were involved in this wording and you had any input. So strengthening all parts of the transport system, I think is a good one. And I think that just generally, it's not one of the ones that I just go, this is the most amazing thing ever, but it's very foundational that we understand that we've got those vehicles and we've got the roads and the roadsides and the speed of travel. Humans are involved in this system for the next, big, long period of time, and improvements as much as we can and strengthening as much as we can with humans within human limitations is still part of the mix. We design for human vulnerability. Now, this term is one, again, you can put your thinking hats on vulnerability. Is it what we want to talk about in human tolerance to physical force, biomechanics of injury? Vulnerability conjures up some other different things, doesn't it? Maybe that's an advantage. Maybe we can leverage off that. Or maybe we need to think exactly about this. But the principles of this is excellent. That the design of the roads, the vehicles, the streets should be based on human biomechanics, how much force the human body can take in different crash types. And we want to make that a design parameter. Now, what I mean by that is, as engineers, as road designers, street designers, we just love a design parameter, right? So take, for example, drainage, floods, right? We will work out and somebody will say, we need to design for a 1 in 100 year flood. Yes, okay. And then the calculations begin and you know exactly what pipe diameter you need and how many entry pits you need. All right, and there's absolutely no question on whether we meet this. We have to meet this. That's lighting. We do the same. Somebody says this needs to be a particular lighting standard, like a V5 lighting for an intersection. Okay, got to be done. We'll work out how we do that. Yeah, earthquakes, for example, buildings. Okay, absolutely. There's no compromise, is there? We have to meet certain codes. We need to get that mindset in with the energy in the system. And what I mean by energy is the speed, the angle, the mass of the crashes that are going to happen, right? That is designing for human vulnerability. We set the parameters on that in is this going to kill and seriously injure our community? Let me give you another very sort of basic example of where this actually is done around the world. Then think about heights of steps and areas that must have a rail. Okay, it doesn't get very high, does it? Where you must have a rail before a drop under occupational health and safety code, building code, and all of those sort of things. right? That's because they've gone, well, if somebody falls off that, they're going to hurt themselves. Thus, we must stop them before they fall off it. Right? They don't just put up a warning sign and say, oh, there's a big drop here. No. We go, that is unacceptable in terms of the injury that it will cause, and we will stop that with an engineering control. Okay. But we don't seem to think that way as much in the road environment. But that's what one of the big changes we're trying to get. Okay, shared responsibility is an interesting one. And this is probably one where I think the messaging can be better. The Australasian College of Road Safety has taken big steps to remove shared responsibility within their talk and discussion around the safe system. The reason for this is when back in the day we started putting shared responsibility into definitions of the safe system, it was absolutely about shifting responsibility from individuals to system designers and managers, taking it from the individual driver and giving it to those responsible for the governance, the management, the design of the system, the design of the road, the choice on speed, all of those things. That was the sharing, right? But a lot of people immediately see that and it just reverts them straight back into saying, well, I've done my bit and designed a road to the standards or done this good road design. It's up to them to use it absolutely 100% correct 100% of the time. I've done my responsibility. Now I'm sharing it with the road user. And that is not the message that was intended with this. And I think it does us some damage by having it out there. And you'll see this as you work with more and more practitioners. They will utilize this when they've designed a high-speed signalized intersection where death and serious injury is absolutely going to happen. They say, no. Well, the road users have to be alert and compliant and that's the sharing of responsibility. We've done a great job here. Okay, anyway, so that one, I do give it a little asterisk too. This I love, absolutely love. Our actions are grounded in evidence and evaluated. Road safety is this amazing industry to work in because everybody feels they are an expert. Like, absolutely, and I'm not belittling anybody on that because they have lived experience and they have 40 years of driving, or they're a daily cyclist, or they walk this same route every day, right? Thus, they feel that absolute expert. I know what's wrong. I know the problem. I've seen it. I've experienced it. The thing is, they are not a statistical sample whatsoever. And nor are you, and nor am I. We cannot make our decisions based on our personal experience. We need to go to evidence. We need to go to proper evaluations, trials, research. We need to look at that and understand it because we will be influenced by what we have been involved in and seen ourselves with our personal lived experience. We don't get this problem with my friends who work in structural engineering or high voltage power distribution. We don't have the public going, I think you should use a 7.4 megawatt transformer there instead of a 12 megawatt transformer. No, nobody's doing that, right? Because they haven't lived that. They don't have that experience with it. But we are in the space where they have and they're passionate about it. All right. And yeah, the comms and engagement challenge around that becomes heightened, obviously, because we've got some pretty passionate people who are absolutely 100% feel that they are right with their assessment of the situation. So I do love this. I love it. It's so important. Another one that I marvel at. Okay. Safety can, in some situations, not be the most palatable, not be the most exciting reason for doing something. We can get amazing community support around health, well-being, livable places, especially in these urban areas where people just want those lovely, vibrant, healthy places where people walk and they cycle and their kids can walk to school and ride to schools and everything like that. Safety is absolutely just like the foundation of it. You cannot create that without safety, without safe system cities and places. So if we can sort of coattail on some of that stuff, we are absolutely in a beautiful place. And we see that some of the European examples have been often driven, at least at a public messaging space, around climate change or, you know, commitments for active travel or these sorts of things. And safety has just been the mechanics of ensuring that those other community objectives are achieved. Safety, a critical decision-making priority. Okay, I love this because it's talking about not just trading off human life with other transport objectives. It's a critical decision-making priority. We promote good choices, but plan for mistakes. Again, wording just beautiful, because there has been a little bit of people saying, oh, the safe system, you're going to encourage people to make mistakes. They won't care anymore. You're trying to create this system where they can just drink and get in the car and do stupid things all the time. No, we're going to promote lots of good choices. We're just realistic in what humans will actually achieve. So we're going to plan and design and manage for the mistakes that happen. Okay, now looks like there's been a few comments come in. Now, Loretta, any of them you're going to have your work cut out for you today? Just monitor which ones are just sharing with the group and which ones I need to have a good look at.
Yeah, look, I mean, lots of great interaction. There was a lot of sort of comments going back and forth in regards to, referencing people rather than cyclists, etc. So some really good comments there. But perhaps the last one just made there by Graham, if you wanted to perhaps reference that one.
Yeah, I'm just reading it, sorry. And yeah. Yeah, I know. I think it's a good point, and I think others can have a read of that. Another one, sorry, that popped up earlier. I mean, everybody is a comms expert too. Absolutely, yep. So you're very much in that space as well, and I think, it's. I think it's something that we can leverage off. Schools, yes. So perceived safety as well as actual safety. Encouraging active modes. Yeah, that one works really well if you leverage it appropriately. Perceived safety and sometimes can get us in a little bit of trouble. Actually, I've got an example later on where I'll delve back into that. This is good interaction. Keep those chats coming, and Loretta will keep just feeding me the ones that I need to sort of specifically answer or make comment on, and others just having a good chat behind the scenes. Let's keep moving on. Again, like I gave that example, and somebody noted it there around the sort of 1 meter drop off a ledge or something like that, or a big step, and let's jump in and just again unpack safety culture generally. Like, this is sort of fundamentals of safety culture 101, and let's look at it in the manufacturing, the widget production. I do give this one to the engineers and road designers as a specific analogy, and workplace health and safety becomes something that people understand, they know, they're committed to. And then you can get that flick in people's mind on how to think about a road system after you unpack it like this. But so back in the day, widget production or making of whatever it is, bottles or whatever, was a fairly open system. By that I mean that they had, people coming in, they'd get a little bit of training, and then they'd be told what their job is. and they'd be told with no uncertain terms, this is dangerous, right? These machines are dangerous. This area is dangerous, right? And then you got to act appropriately in here. And they push safety responsibility to the individuals, be that the kids cleaning the machines or the workers in there, whatever it is. It's up to them to be safe in the unsafe environment. So it's highly risky. And when you push that safety of the individual, it's pathological safety culture. So then as machines rip off arms and crush kids and kill people, okay, those are then fixed. That's the reactive safety culture. Okay, so when you're getting into that phase of fixing that particular machine and changing it, putting a guard on it, that's reactive safety culture. Then it gets into this economic battle and challenge, or where people start to analyze and say, well, actually, if we can do improvements on these 3 machines, we expect to see less people killed and less people seriously injured, which means we can continue more widget production over time. And it means that we don't have to pay so much money out to the families if the people have been killed or disabled. So it's actually a good investment for our factory or factories to do this investment on these bits and pieces. And we'll find that absolute optimal investment point. But then we step up to where we want to be, which is that proactive safety culture. And proactive safety culture essentially sets this very high bar for safety. So very low risk acceptance, has that aspiration or that point of 0 death and serious injury is what's only acceptable. And then you work your widget production within that. And there's a real requirement for constant maintenance of that culture and any equipment, assets associated with that. So you need to continually work on that. So that's what we call the safety culture ladder. And it's not just for manufacturing or roads as we've laid it on. It's for everything associated with safety. And with the road system, we often really spread a little bit across all of these in terms of the culture we have. We have a fair bit of pathological safety culture out there where we are giving young people licenses or asking them to walk or ride in areas where it is absolutely well known that if things happen, death and serious injury is a very distinct possibility. And we tell them to be safe. We tell them to act appropriately and safely because safety is their responsibility. All right? So reactive, yes, absolutely. A black spot study or a crash reduction study or going in and treating those areas where people are killed, yes, that's still part of the culture. The transport economics is huge. Like people love working out optimal investment in terms of safety. Well, balance this out, balance a little bit here and there. We do see more and more proactive safety hitting the roads and streets of New Zealand. And I always think it's important we highlight and celebrate some of this sort of stuff. School speed zones were some of the earliest proactive safety culture we saw in road safety from a very tangible sense. What I mean by that is that if you take one step back in the safety culture ladder, it doesn't really cut it. So if you do economic analysis on school speed zones, they are a very bad investment from a standard transport economic model. They just don't cut it. There's just not enough kids killed and seriously injured to warrant the investment in the infrastructure, but also the time, the tiny bits of time it costs every driver. And then you add all of that up and multiply it by some dollar figures and you would get this. Yeah, but that's not acceptable, is it? I mean, the proactive nature, I mean, we will protect the kids. It's not about finding the right number of the balance of kids to be killed and seriously injured. Nobody wants that, right? We all say no. Safety is paramount. That is what we're going to do. And now, again, you're going through some political changes at the moment, and school speed zones and the rollout of the further measures on that is something that people are working through. But, you know, I think it's a good example of proactive. I think continuous barrier systems on some of your new roads, your high-speed roads, another great example of proactive. You're not waiting to see where the people run off the road and die and then put a bit of barrier there, right? Again, it's not a calculation decision. It's a this must be set in order for this investment to actually happen. Again, if we use heights as another example, it's the equivalent with some of these new roads and continuous barrier systems to, like, we're going to build a high-rise building with balconies. They're going to have rails. It's not going to be a build it, wait, see where people fall off, put a bit of barrier there, or go, you know what? Actually, the dollar figure for the number of people that'll fall, it just doesn't actually make economic sense. No. This has to be part of the investment. That's what it is. Okay, so I say quiz time, but this is just a little one. Loretta, we're probably going to see a few things pop into the chat very shortly. So anything will sort of go up the screen. So anything that I need to deal with, you can let me know. I've asked some of this before, and I've seen this analogy used a couple of times in New Zealand, you know, comms information and the like. But when Usain Bolt ran the world record 100-meter sprint, he crossed the finish line running at a speed in kilometers per hour. Pop it into the chat. What speed was that? What was his speed? If you had a radar gun and you got him just as he was crossing the finish line, what speed's he going? Like 150 kilometers an hour or 5 kilometers an hour, or where are we? Have a guess. Pop it in the chat. I'll give a prize to the person who's the closest. Okay, seeing some ideas come in. While these come in, Loretta, anything I need to deal with?
No questions have come through, so that's all good.
Great. Okay, I think Georgia is going to be our winner. I think it was Georgia. It flicked up past there. Yeah, so it's about 44 kilometers per hour. Okay, that's essentially the fastest speed a human has got to. Flat ground, off the power of their own legs, not too much wind behind them, right? That's maximum human running speed. So what I want you to do is imagine parking a Toyota Hilux at the end of Usain Bolt's lane. Running down there at 44 kilometers an hour and bang, he hits that. Okay, will he survive? And the answer to that is yes. He's going to survive that. In fact, he will recover from his injuries, which he'll injure himself a bit, but he will lead a normal, healthy life, right? Or that's what all of our prediction says. You can test a human's tolerance to physical force, their biomechanics of injury, by making them run at full speed at a tree or a brick wall. That is about their limit of force before they sustain lifelong debilitating injuries or death. Humans are designed to abruptly stop at maximum running speed, right? That is our initial point we can use as a reference on human tolerance to physical force, biomechanics of injury, right? That is what we're designed for. That's the force that we're okay with. Okay, he hurt himself. He broke a few ribs, recovered, came back the next year, won the gold medal. Humans are designed for some level of force. But of course, we fling around the road network and stuff flies at us at much higher speeds than we were ever designed or evolved to tolerate. Now, I'm going to give you a little stretch break, fill up the coffee break in a couple of minutes. So We'll get to that. But we have some understanding of human tolerance to physical force under different crash types. And you may have seen these curves. They've been used quite a long time. And yes, there's lots and lots of people trying to recreate these curves and look at adding newer fleet options and different injury levels and all sorts of things. These still remain fairly relevant, and we still continue to use them. What this is passenger vehicle striking pedestrian. And we know that the chance of death just really exponentially kicks up around 30 kilometers an hour. Now, this is for the entire community. This is a trend curve. So we've got, crashes have happened all over the place, but they just trend in around that curve. Okay. Yes, there'll be outliers. We'll have people hit very, very, very low speeds in a car park, and they fall and they hit their head. And these rare outliers. We'll also have people on motorways hit and amazingly, miraculously survive it. But that's the general trend for vehicle strikes pedestrian. This is collision speed. This is not speed limit, right? This is just the biomechanics of injury physics. This is what speed was the actual strike, and was it a death? So the great man comes up there a little bit. Okay, so we have this for right angle crashes. In crash sort of investigation terminology, we would call the one that does the damage the bullet vehicle. The bullet vehicle does the damage. The target vehicle is the one carrying the occupants that are killed or seriously injured, or the injured parties. So bullet vehicle speed, sort of 30, 40, about 50 kilometers an hour is where it exponentially kicks up. It goes really bad with small increases in speed after that on these right angle crashes. And for head-on crashes, we see this around about that 70 kilometers per hour is where things go really bad, really quickly after that in small increases in speed. And that's sort of closing speed of 140 kilometers an hour. But we always think about the forces on the individual occupant of one of these vehicles. So that's going, assuming two cars, same mass, same speed, direct front crash, which doesn't happen in real world, but the physics of it says they will go from 70 kilometers an hour to 0 in that instant. And the deceleration, which is where we get the damage to the occupants of internal organs ripping from where they should be, and all sorts of other injury, that deceleration is a 70 kilometer per hour crash. So this sets us an interesting then parameter of understanding, okay, we've got a bit of an idea then of what are the forces we can sort of say, beyond this, it is absolutely not acceptable. And under this, maybe we need to continue to work on this to keep eliminating it. But if we often have this line at 10% here, where things go really bad really quickly after it. And in a communication sense, I think this is one you have to think about a little bit as we dig more into this, because you say 30 kilometers per hour or less for striking a pedestrian or a cyclist for that matter. Well, we know even if we get 30 kilometers per hour and somebody is struck, we're still going to have people killed and seriously injured. It's just going to be far, 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 far less than at 40 or 50, right? And so we are continuing to work on lots of efforts in this space and lots of innovation and new ideas, and some areas will go even lower. But, to say, we talk about 30 as a safe speed, and it is a hugely safer speed, but there will be these, rare circumstances where a strike at 30 will kill. And this, remember, also is just fatalities. Okay, serious injuries alter these curves a bit more and bring them even a little bit further down. But I don't get too caught up on it, because if we could have just achieved these speeds on the road network where you can have these crash types, we would have such huge reductions in death and serious injury, and it would start to bring us more in line with any other form of transport. Would it get us absolute zero? No. And we need to continue to work on all of that, but it's a massive, massive shift. We're so far away from this at the moment on the New Zealand network that, you know, to me, we sort of talk about this and then we'll deal with the rest. But I'll be happy with any comments or feedback on that.
I do have a question that's come through though, Ken, in regards to the graphs. Have they changed since the advent of safer cars 5-star rating?
Okay, excellent question. The prize there. So these graphs came out of Europe, and they came out of Europe probably a bit over a decade ago, and they were based on some work, some research that had been done, and a few other. Well, they actually get a lot of crash force data from black boxes in cars, which and e-call systems and the like, and then they can cross-reference that against hospital data and get an understanding. Okay, the car was going at this speed, and we got an understanding the angle of the crash or what was struck, and then match that to a hospital. Yep, okay, and that was the outcome. So they can start to do this. So the vehicle fleet in Europe, you know, is so much more advanced in terms of safety features than the New Zealand fleet, and that's something that we need to have a good look at as to why there is that lag. So it's not actually that far off what the current New Zealand fleet in terms of safety features are with the vehicles that were involved in a lot of these crashes in this study. So yeah, it was more advanced than that. And finally, like the other things that have popped up as I've talked about sort of biomechanics of injury and human tolerance to physical force in my time, which always fascinates me, is one to say, well, are the humans involved then in Europe the same stature as the New Zealanders or this Queenslanders or whoever I'm talking? I'm like, yeah, humans generally all withstand generally the same amount of force. It's funny, quite a while back I was in New Zealand at a conference presenting, and it was when New Zealand had a 0.08 blood alcohol concentration driving, and it was talk about bringing it to 0.05, and one of the speakers was like, well, we don't think that the data around 0.05 has been tested on the New Zealand public. That was literally the foundation of their paper, was to say we can drink more than the rest of the world. I was like, this is losing my mind here. Anyway, so yeah, yes, there's some things that are absolutely necessary to be localized and targeted and working with that. And certainly messaging is a huge one. Obviously, you need to be understanding your target audience and what you're trying to achieve and how do they perceive things and all that like. But you know, physics, biomechanics of injury, and things worldwide, and certainly we can understand then what are the fleets that we're using within that. Great question, and got me off on a slight tangent, but I love going on tangents. You'll also see we've got the PDF of the notes in the learning management system. You can download them, and we've hyperlinked to some safe system snippets, which we were talking about before, and you can have a little look at some more information on the topic. Sometimes we chuck a video in, sometimes a link to a different site or the like, so a little bit more information for you there. I'm going to give you a little exercise to do and a chance to have a stretch shortly, and I've talked about this with a number of people in the past, but I want to just show you this diagram, which comes up in road safety a lot, and it is the bane of my existence, this diagram. And it is not because the research is wrong. The research is impeccable, like amazing. And it actually, there's like lots and lots of these studies. They are crash causation studies. So what that is people get a whole pile of crashes, thousands of crashes that have happened, and then they analyze them in excruciating detail. And they do massive root cause analysis. They're trying to look for all of the factors that played a role in this crash, right? And then what they produce is inevitably a massive report and a few sort of key sort of takeaways. And this one, which was 2003 Kibler study, 93% of crash causation is, in this study, was driver error. There's been other studies where it involved all road users, road user error. It's always about 90, 95%, somewhere around that. Cause of crashes, human error. Road plays a role in the cause of some of the crashes. So, you know, that maybe the road was deceiving, maybe there was error in, you know, the lights were out or these sorts of things. And vehicle malfunction, a small aspect of it. But this is crash causation, the cause of crashes. But the reason I absolutely hate this diagram is because it gets immediately in the hands of very influential, very powerful people who have just started in road safety. That could be ministers, it could be, you know, the new head of road safety, whatever it is. They're very wonderful managers and great, you know, strategists and all of that. But they see this and they're like, found a study and 93% of the cause of crashes is driver error. Thus, we must work on the biggest cause here. That's where we're going to put our effort and our attention. But that's the hardest thing to change. So what we need to do is rethink this, reshape this, and think, no, our system failed. Of course the human failed, right? That was absolutely it. Okay, we'll address these ones in slightly other ways. But how has the system then managed that obvious mistake that was going to happen? They fell asleep. They were looking at their phone. They were looking at the kid screaming in the back. They were a 19-year-old male. Okay, they're going to take risks. Well, a good portion of them are, right? These are just like, that's just human. Okay, so we need to change it. So we say that was a system failure to let that result in death and serious injury. Now, Austroads popped this out and they left a little bit outside there, driver excess, driver inexperience. I think that that's just a transition to us eventually getting to the point where everything sits inside as a system failure. You know, driver excess, driving 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way on the motorway, that is a system failure. How on earth did the car let that happen? It wasn't a technology issue that we don't know how to make technology stop cars from doing that. That's not the issue. We can just say that as a system failure. And error in the transport system is more complicated than just, you know, I decided to drive 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way on the motorway. Oh no, it's complicated, and there's nice juicy reports of, you know, there's a good Centre for Automotive Safety Research report, a couple of 100 pages on errors in road transport and how to understand them. But I won't go through this in detail. I just want to draw a line there. Deliberate violators represent somewhere in the order of 30%, maybe a little bit higher, 30% of death and serious injury for New Zealanders. That is people who are somewhat premeditated, deliberately deviating from set rules or procedures. The bulk of the death and serious injury involves people generally going about their business and getting distracted by things, falling asleep, they're just generally going about their business. Maybe, yeah, it alters a bit, but we have real challenges with the public's perception on this, the way the media portrays it, and you're all in the space to understand this better, but that's good news story, or not good news, but exciting news, very captivating news story, isn't it? This is a little more boring. I mean, the outcome can be pretty horrific, and that's grabs attention, but these less of exciting news story than down here. And thus what the public see is a lot of these extreme activities resulting in death or serious injury, which reinforces that this is not a system issue, this is an individual issue and an individual choice and a behavior issue. Okay, don't get me wrong, that is a massive, massive thing to deal with. And I just say that may take a very, very different approach to this. This actually is a societal challenge in more than this is, in the challenge aspect of it. And I did work on an Austroads report, which was recidivist offenders, people who we just catch them and then they're back again doing the same thing, and understanding, what is it about recidivist offenders in speeding or drinking or drugs or whatever it is. And there's this great statement which my colleague Dave Shelton wrote in that, which was, people drive the way they live. And it does just resonate beautifully, and that sits often in that cohort. Anyway, let's jump to something. I want to give you a challenge, and I want to read. And Loretta's just wants to ask you something. I know I can see you there, but I'm not going to let you do it quite yet.
All right.
I'm going to get people thinking about this as I have a look at the questions, and they also have a break. So we're going to do a little 5-minute exercise, and then I'm going to delve into something else. Just a consolidation of thinking, traditional approach to road safety, safe system approach. Some of you have probably done this exercise before, maybe slightly different worded. A poll's going to come up on your screen. Victim blaming, and it's the way we said, well, the driver fell asleep, the driver was speeding, the driver did this, the driver did that. What is it? What are we trying to move towards? And so the poll should. You can't do polls. I'm going to do the polls myself, don't I?
Yeah, sorry. I think because you had it open earlier.
It's not in your little dots.
No, it's not coming up. It says it's on another device, so I'm guessing it's your device.
Okay, well, people can have a look at that. Start talking to me about questions, and I'm just going to give people 4 minutes to. Sorry. Module 2 poll. Oh, no. I didn't want to do that. Sorry, ignore that. It's not launched, is it? End poll, sorry. There we go. So each one of those, you can see victim blaming. What are we trying to go to under a safe system? Have a go through that. Don't worry too much about it. It's just to try to consolidate a little bit of that thinking. Make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to give you 4 minutes on that. I'm going to read some questions. I'm going to answer those. You also can have a stretch and a coffee break. It's a little bit of consolidation of thinking, and we'll get back into it. So people put the last of their things in. I just want to talk to some of the wonderful little comments and questions that came in. I am going to talk a lot more about speed limits, speed management coming up. So that was one of the questions around other countries' approach and attitude towards different speed limits and the like. So I'll talk to that. Yeah, I think the mindset shift in the public and within our own ranks, within road authorities and within the industry, around the change between thinking about stopping crashes versus that mindset of eliminating harm. So eliminating harm in incidents is a big one that we need to continue to work on. Okay, let's end that poll. Thank you. Well done. I'm just having a flick through the outcomes here. I haven't shared that. I'll do that on the screen, but we have some really good uniformity there, so well done. Victim blaming and moving to that, recognizing human error and minimizing its consequence, shared responsibility. One of the other questions there that came up associated with that CASAR study around errors in the system is, does speeding fit above or below that line? Is that deliberate violating error? Well, they categorize it like low-level speeding sat above the line, and sort of higher end speeding was below the line. So the higher speed sort of boy racer hoon style stuff was definitely below the line, but you know, people going a bit over the speed limit, which is not something we want to be happening, but they sort of saw it more as a generally try not to do something overly bad. Yep. So exactly where those lines get drawn, there's a lot of debate on it. So road user education and compliance, there's just more of that effort now to create that forgiving system. Now, forgiving system, meaning that when those things happen, it doesn't result in death or serious injury. It's forgiving from that sense. It doesn't mean we're ignoring road user education and compliance. It's more just an understanding of its limitations. It's important. It fits within what we're doing for the next 30 years, but yeah, more concentration on that forgiving system. So here's that one we were sort of just talking about, crash reduction. So preventing all crashes. Well, no, understanding we need to manage the crashes, think about the consequence, try to stop or minimize severe injury. Yeah, we were a little siloed in the past with these pillars. Well, the roads people do the roads and speed people speeds and the vehicles. We're trying to think about that as a multifaceted system. They all interact jointly, and it is an interacting system. And I'll show you a diagram which represents why you can think about it that way shortly. And a mobility safety balance, that was the classic. And yeah, I sort of weep at letters I wrote in my past life in road authority when I was managing speed limits for a jurisdiction, and we just would stand, you know, letters going back, you know, speed limits are a balance between safety and mobility, and, you know, talking about economic productivity and these sort of things. I mean, I can read it these days and just go, yeah, just says, hey, we've got to kill some people to move, keep the roads and streets moving. We've got to change sort of that attitude to it. And yes, you can work with your comms team and come up with very crafty messages, but the fundamentals of it are trading off human life for other transport objectives. Okay, Loretta will be monitoring the chat. So if you do have a specific question, pop it in with a question mark. And otherwise, keep your comments going in to others, putting your thoughts on it. I want to just jump into a few of these specific, what I'll call elements of the system. Again, a little language thing that I use is to not talk about pillars of the safe system, because pillars to me are a little too close to silos. And that they do give that, oh, no, there's that one and there's that one. I like elements because I can see them interacting a bit more. Somebody did counter that to me, though, once and say, well, no, pillars hold up something. And if you take a pillar away, the whole thing comes down. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I can see that. No, so I'm a bit more okay with pillars, but elements of the system, levers that we can use to try to achieve our principles. And you can see there we've got the roads and roadsides, and I will spend a good bit of time on that. There's a lot in that space. We've got the vehicles and all the safety features the vehicles can provide. We've got the road user and the choices and making road users safer. Right? And this is one where I would say safer is correct. This one is where I want safe, because I'm sort of realistic in limitations there, but I think that can be made essentially safe for the errors that are going to happen down here. System management and the wider governance and practices around that, and work-related safety. Again, little bit of New Zealand brilliance to push that in, because people understand it is unacceptable to have death and serious injury in the workplace. For some reason, it seems acceptable on the roads. We're trying to change that culture, but if you've already got a culture that says it's unacceptable, let's coattail on that. All right, because there's a lot of people traveling on the roads. Biggest work-related killer on the roads and serious injury. They just ignore them for some reason. And again, crafted brilliantly in terms of wording. A New Zealand where no one is killed or seriously injured in road crashes. So it's acknowledging that they're going to happen, essentially. There is killed or seriously injured in those crashes. It's not saying a New Zealand where no crashes occur. Maybe you could play around a bit more with it. But anyway, let's keep going. But I want to talk about those vehicles first and give you that indication of where we're at with the vehicles and understand what our pipeline of awesome safety technology is to come and what we can leverage and utilize off that. So we know ANCAP safety ratings was mentioned earlier before, 5 stars being the safest vehicles. And important to note, if you don't know already, that you've got to correlate a star rating to the year it was star rated. So a 5-star car 2014 might only get 1 star now if it was tested under today's test protocol, but it'll still be referred to as a 5-star vehicle. So remember that 5-star at a point in time. It's been pretty awesome to see that safety is a sellable commodity, that people will look for that. Tomorrow I'm running a workshop on vehicle safety messaging. I'm facilitating it. I'm not sort of the expert in talking about how to message and get safety features moving forward, but fascinating reports that I was reading as some background understanding that in purchasing choices of vehicles, star rating has sort of elevated itself to about number 3 in terms of people's big decision making around which vehicles they'll purchase. Now that is for the Australian environment. Admittedly, I haven't seen data on New Zealand. Some of you might know that, but that's pretty good. It's come up from not even in the top 10 in there, so that's pretty good. But I think it's important to understand limitations on what we see as 5 stars. So 5-star essentially says, we have crash tested this vehicle in a certain way, and the crash test dummy did not get an acquired brain injury or die. Well, didn't have enough force imparted on it to be really, really, really seriously injured. They're going to hold that for the rest of their life, need care, all of it, and then they haven't been killed. So prize here for the side impact pole test, which is where the vehicle slides in here at a speed in kilometers per hour and hits a pole, and they measure all the sensors in the dummy. What speed do you think that test happens at? What's the test speed? What speed does that fly in? I'll give a prize for the person closest to that. All right, Tony's in first with 50 kilometers an hour, 50, 50, 50, 50, 55. These are good. 60, 64, 64, 60, 50, 70. Nobody's quite got it yet. 64s and the like are, that's the frontal offset crash test. Okay, you're all doing pretty well. Nobody's got it. And in fact, everybody is too high. The crash test, Bianca came in quickly late. We'll give Lily a prize there, 35. So the crash test has recently gone up from 29 kilometers an hour to 32 kilometers an hour. So 32 kilometers an hour is the side impact pole crash test speed. Five stars, if at 32 kilometers an hour, the occupant isn't going to get an acquired brain injury. Okay, you can see the disparity between the speed vehicles travel on the network where there are trees, power poles, and the like, and the crash force that we could expect the side of a vehicle, even the best vehicles, to withstand. That's with side turn airbags and other things, right? But the reason for this is the physics of trying to absorb energy and manage energy is complicated. And the side of a vehicle is horribly engineered for that. the front of the vehicle is better. And people were saying 64 kilometers an hour, frontal offset test speed, 64 kilometers an hour, this one, right? Because we can handle some more because we spread the load a bit. So you get energy pushed out over a wider area. Then we've got crumple zone, airbags, seatbelts, all frontal crash energy management features. Side impact is just harder. I mean, yes, small side curtain airbag, all of the energy on a point source hazard, we'd call it, like a power pole or tree. Now, some people would say that, hey, well, I mean, really, what is the odds of somebody actually sliding sideways and hitting a tree or a power pole? Well, the mechanics of a crash in these high-speed road environments is that a driver is generally how it happens. Driver is driving, they fall asleep. I'm going to go with fall asleep. It could be other reasons. But they sort of drift off the road, and then they're off the road, and they wake up, or they come back to looking at the road environment, and then they freak out, as you would, driving 100 kilometers an hour or 105 or whatever you are, and you're off the road. So they pull the wheel back as they slam on the brakes to try to get back on the road, and they yaw. Now, yawing is the sideways slide of a vehicle. And what we see is then at 100 kilometers an hour, they're exposing the side of their vehicle to anything. Then they'll probably get traction, and then they'll overcorrect at the other side. And that'll be a double yaw. So then they'll expose the other side of the vehicle. Okay. And then it's just sort of chaos from there. Do they roll? Do they find a tree? Do they manage to just sort of recover safely? So that's one. We also see it with a bit of that higher speed, going fast around corners, pushing it, and then they'll lose the back end of the vehicle. Traction control systems are getting better in lessening this, but we do see that side exposure of vehicles appearing a lot. Another wonderful sort of elevation with what we're thinking about with vehicle safety technology is it's now not just all about protecting the occupants of the vehicle, but protecting those that the vehicle is going to hit. So included in our ANCAP testing is the vulnerable road user tests, where they have to hit a crash test dummy, or actually they just fire ahead at the bonnet. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The mechanics of it, specifically, it has to have things like bonnets will pop up nowadays in most vehicles, or an airbag will come out over the bonnet, and it absorbs the energy there for any vulnerable road users that struck, so a pedestrian or a cyclist. Or potentially a motorcyclist. So that's good. I think that's a wonderful feature. That one happens at 40 kilometers an hour, which is interesting. That's interesting, obviously, for a number of reasons, as we think about speed limits and the management of speed in pedestrians areas. So I think there's some pretty exciting opportunities there. But retrofits to vehicles, I think, is a really good one. Like underrun protection for vehicles. So we have seen a lot of around the world and in Australia and New Zealand, vulnerable road users being caught up with large vehicles in that gap in there. And obviously with bigger vehicles, more gaps. So whether it's the vehicle turning or one reason or another, and even other vehicles sort of side impacting these vehicles. So connecting up those gaps and making it so it's very hard for a vulnerable road user or other to get under the vehicles is good. But I like this. Yes, okay, so they've highlighted what this is for. I also like the fact that you can work with an organization, so Boral in this sense, and make them sort of a champion of it. It can be part of their sales pitch. They're part of their we care for other road users in the transport of our goods and the like. Now, this is one of Paul Tierney, who's going to come on Module 3, his ad campaigns that he did while him and I were working back at VicRoads, which I particularly like, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on it. It didn't get as much airtime as I think we reposted it on LinkedIn with one of our Safe System snippets a while back. But it's that recognition of different retrofits to vehicles, bull bars or other, particular features change things dramatically in terms of outcomes. So all of the ANCAP crash testing for vulnerable road users is on a vehicle without any of these additions. But adding the bull bar, for example, is going to make it 50% more likely that the pedestrian gets killed under that bit of research. So that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we've got to think about those additions. Now, messaging-wise, I reckon this is quite creative, quite clever, quite helpful. Would it stop people putting bull bars on their vehicle? I don't know. Would it help with the messaging on legislation and building a platform for legislative change around this? Probably. But when do we get to this vehicle? This vehicle with no steering wheel, and we're, road safety is not an industry anymore. And gee, I would love it to be in my lifetime. But really, a few things we've got to deal with. One is the technology. And while the technology is going ahead leaps and bounds, it is still, there's still a lot of work to be done. Two is the legislative and governance and acceptance of it. Okay, even if we had all the technology that was perfect, we've got to get a community convinced and accepting and being okay with the idea of vehicles all driving themselves around the network. And then the third one is just the fleet turnover, and associated with that, a whole myriad of things that are going to be challenges, which is the social disparity we're going to see with, rich people get safe stuff and people who can't afford it don't, and those sorts of challenges. I mean, that plays out a little bit currently, but it'll just magnify as we go over in time. All that interaction with vulnerable road users and getting all of that worked out, that's part technology, but fleet turnover is going to be a big one. And we know it's, what is it, about 16 years or 17 years or something on the New Zealand fleet. It's one of the oldest fleets in a developed country in terms of turning over your vehicles to have newer safety feature vehicles. So even if we had it all now, we're still talking 20 years before you turn over the bulk of the fleet. You'd still have some hanger-oners of refusing to get rid of their vintage vehicle, but so it's a long way off, and there's just a massive amount of death and serious injury to the community to come if we don't change other things around this system. We will see lots of features of the vehicles come into play that aren't as obvious as, okay, there's no steering wheel, it's a self-driving vehicle. The vehicles more and more will give us the impression we are driving, but they just take over when they decide it's inappropriate. So here you can see some vehicles stopping, the driver's not doing anything. There's one that knocked the leg off. Even the leg coming off there, that's funny, but it's actually a win. That's a success. That vehicle sort of hit the brakes and then hit at lower speed. Okay, we know crash is still going to happen. The vehicles will start to wash off some of the speed of impact. So yeah, we're gonna have a good period of transition time. It's going to be messy. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be all sorts of legislation changes and requirements and the like. And this is one where we can go back to some of that crash causation work that I talked about in that the Venn diagram, which was the bane of my existence. Well, okay, if you take the humans out of it completely, we have eliminated 93% of the errors. Assuming that the vehicles aren't making errors themselves, and you've got to think a little bit about that. I think it's overinflated with terms of hacking and other bits and pieces, but yeah, so that is an exciting, promising future. It's just the time and the actual technology to make that happen is huge. But this interplay between the vehicles of now and the vehicles of the future and the other elements of the system is critical because they don't work in isolation. And we play that out with some Vision Zero modeling and thinking about, okay, well, we know where we are now and we know where we want to be, which is 0 death and serious injury by 2050. What is the path you would actually use to get there? And what is the best path to go? And by the best path to go, it's actually often thinking about what are the vehicle technologies that are coming over time and how do we leverage those the best? Very simple sort of question you always ask with these investment scenarios is it better to put barriers down like a one road or just create edge lines on other roads, lots and lots and lots of edge lines on other roads, because, you know, marking an edge line is a lot cheaper. Well, sometimes you have to widen it a little bit, which is more expensive, edge lines. And that's the sort of the debate on, well, how much of the vehicle fleet at what time will have lane keep assist so that the vehicles will be looking for that edge line. And if we're not providing that, we won't be able to leverage that safety feature. But if we are providing that, then they'll be there. So it's a better investment to do, you know, tens of thousands of kilometers of edge line or, you know, 20, 50 kilometers of barrier system. And you're doing those sorts of what is the best we can do. But it also gets very complicated because you can add like another 1,000 different ideas into that mix of decision making. Okay, anything there, Loretta, for me to deal with? We're doing well here, people.
I've got a couple of questions from a little bit earlier. Just going back to the 32-kilometer speed.
Yes.
The question that came through was, why do they choose this speed to test?
Yeah, I agree. Well, it is definitely not to do with the crashes that we see on the public road network and the speeds that those are happening. It is not that. You'd think that would be the way you do it. You go, well, what are the crashes that are killing and seriously injuring our community? And then say to the vehicles, you have to meet those speeds and get them within tolerances. But no, it was it's a real sort of negotiation with the manufacturers. To say that, they go, well, no, we just can't do it. Like that, we go out of business associated with that, and we just won't. There will be no cars coming into New Zealand or Australia or any of the ANCAP areas under these things, or they just go, nah, we're not going to bother trying to get 5 stars. We'll take 0 stars, and we'll still be able to sell vehicles. Tony's got hand up. Great.
I have the great pleasure of working on the Safe Vehicles program at Waka Kotahi. I have put a little chat in the a message in the chat. Just for those that haven't read it, just wanted to clarify that those ANCAP ratings just apply to new vehicles coming in. And in New Zealand, I think that's, if I'm remembering rightly, it's about 12% of our fleet that would have a current ANCAP rating.
Right.
The vast majority of our fleet have a used car safety rating, and that is based on analysis of real-world crash data.
Good.
And another kind of key difference between Australia and New Zealand is in New Zealand, we allow currently the import of used vehicles, whereas Australia doesn't. So that also affects the balance of the ratings system that is used. I put a little link in there. Feel free to go and nerd out, people, if you want to, and read all about safety ratings on the Right Car website.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's really, really useful and sort of no doubt adds to that why New Zealand has one of the oldest fleets if you're importing used vehicles.
Now, just one more question. Sorry, Ken. What crashes happen more often? Is it the side impact or head on?
Head on. well, sorry, in rural areas, high speed in terms of highest injury, side impact will have more of the sort of middle order serious injury. There's some pretty great crash statistics information, data information trends on Whakatahi website. We won't have time to sort of delve into all of that. Thank you. Okay, I'll keep ticking on. Now, I do have to give a little bit of time to Loretta here at the end to ask you or show you in the learning management system where to do your little quiz. And I'm going to pick wherever we get up to, I'm going to pick it up next module. And then at the end of next module, I've actually got this little free-for-all vote discussion, and I'll go down whichever rabbit hole you direct me down. I've given you 10 different options to see what the people want me to sort of chat about, just with the limitation of time. But I absolutely have to talk about speed and speed management. It is also one of those 10 at the end where we could go lots and lots of depth on it. But let me go back to fundamentals of speed. Okay, so first of all, speed. Travel speed of a vehicle, and so travel speed of a vehicle and the speed of impact are not a linear relationship. So what do I mean by that? Okay, if a vehicle is traveling at 60 kilometers an hour and somebody steps out from behind a parked car 45 meters away, they take some time to actually understand what is happening, process that information. Okay, I've got to do something now. Lift up their leg, put it on the brake. Then the braking begins, and you know, your physics and traction, and the car comes and it just will touch that pedestrian. So let's now just go and make it 10 kilometers per hour faster. Just 10 kilometers per hour faster. They should hit at what? 10 kilometers an hour? No. 46 kilometers an hour. So that's showing the non-linear relationship. If they hit it at 10 kilometers an hour, that would be a linear relationship. No, 46 kilometers an hour. So you can see this increase. So that's one thing. It's a non-linear relationship. If we overlay onto that outcomes to the human, remember our speed curves? And they were not linear either. We saw them going like that, didn't we? Okay, so what we then understand is that for a percentage change in speed, travel speed here, percentage change in travel speed, start here on the x-axis. The y-axis is percentage change in crashes, and the red one is our worst type of crash. So these are our fatal. Serious injury in terms of next down in terms of the energy. Mind you, some of the serious injuries, it depends how you define worse. They are horrific in terms of lifelong debilitating stuff. But we see fourth power relationship, third power relationship. When I teach the engineers, they love it. They love a good, put a formula to something, a nice different power relationship. But basically what that's saying is that small changes in travel speed play out to big changes in the highest injury, highest worst outcome, and less for the next worst. And actually, if you plot other injury crashes, it sort of comes down like that, and minor is in there and about it. So speed is so important. Playing around with trying to message this, how do you message the magnification of speed and speed impact? Certainly this is not a well-crafted campaign or message or anything. This is just me playing around with memes. But you know, the magnification of the impact of speed from the vehicle's travel speed, when you change your stopping distance, there's more reaction time, and then the physics of it, and so the impact is larger, then the energy is larger, and we use kinetic energy equations which have squares in them. And so the end outcome is huge in terms of the actual death and serious injury to our communities. It really just magnifies along the way, and it's not that particular linear relationship. And as I was updating the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed limits and speed management, just to frame how we can think about speed and the interaction, is to say that when you know the biomechanics of the human body, like how much force can the human body take in different crash scenarios, and you understand the vehicle fleet you've got and the roads and roadside environment you've got for energy management and managing these incidents, and the users and what they're going to be wearing in terms of protective gear or the like, you just then filter by a travel speed, and you have a safe transport system. It is the governor. You can have a safe system by the appropriate management of speed with whatever investment you can make. It's the one that we can change. But as you know so well, it comes with all sorts of challenges, huge challenges for us to work with. But at that very sort of philosophical fundamental perspective, it's what we can achieve immediately, pretty much immediately. Now, I always do want to say, though, that this travel speed and the safe system, it's not all about lowering speeds. It's about appropriate speeds for all of these things. Okay, a road and transport system, like a road and street network, is there to move people and goods, right? Yes, we've got other things that are awesome about roads and streets, like livable places and, communities and, all of that sort of stuff as well. But it is it's got this movement function. We need to acknowledge that we are, here to create that system that is safe for us to be able to move in. So we can create an immediate safe system by making State Highway 130 kilometers an hour and actually getting people to do it. Okay, ridiculous, isn't it? Like people will be up in arms. But even if you take that away, it is about getting people on these longer journeys, and they have to move there at some speed, right? And I use the analogy sometimes of a racetrack. A racetrack is a very highly aligned safe system environment because it's got infrastructure that is specifically designed to manage energy in incidents at speeds. It's got vehicles with wonderful safety features. It's got drivers that are, alert and compliant as well. So that's a part of it. They make mistakes too. But the system is designed for that. And under those scenarios, we generally have high speeds and we don't see deaths and serious injuries. There is the occasional death and serious injury on racetracks, but it's generally a reasonable analogy to say it's not about always speed limit reductions. It's about appropriate speed for the context you have it in terms of vehicles, roads, and a little bit road users. Do a couple more and then I'll take questions. Oh, I've got to be quick here. So speed limits are part of the equation. Infrastructure, we can create road environments that are conducive to specific speeds. We can do it with what we call local area traffic management, speed humps, chicanes, narrowing of roads, but speed limits are highly effective. Explaining why the speed limit's in place can increase acceptance and compliance. And generally, protection of vulnerable road users is pretty well accepted. Motorcyclists, not so much. They are what we call a vulnerable road user, but people don't seem to resonate on understanding a lower speed limit, particularly for motorcyclists. And I'll let you ponder that messaging. But technology and utilizing, so these are your rural intersection activated warning signs. So this is a speed limit on the main road, but only when a vehicle's coming in that side road or turning into the side road. So targeting that reduction at that specific point in time for risk. So technology is starting to get quite exciting, and we can adapt and move with that. And just like the old sort of Mythbusters is an interesting one, again, in comms and engagement, because there is that work that sort of shows if you go to bust a myth, you can sometimes reinforce the myth because you're, headlining that myth. So you've got to be careful with that. I certainly have in the past put out Mythbusters and things like that, and then people will send me research and I go, oh God, okay, probably shouldn't have done that, because now I'm just highlighting. And but I think the Autobahn one is it just comes up so often when you talk about speed limits, and people say, oh no, the Germans, no speed limits on the Autobahns, and they're the safest things in the world. They're the safest roads in the world. And that's because it's not about speed, it's about training and the engineering of the road environment. If you get that right, if we have people who are as skilled as the Germans in driving, no, well, that's just ridiculous. Like, you actually look at the data, so the world, in terms of road safety industry, they liken German Autobahns to American gun control. Like, it's hideous in terms of death and serious injury, right? But it is sort of not changed due to the fabric of the German way that they, the auto industry and everything like the freedom and all of that. It is not good. Here's just a simple comparison. A couple of roads I had immediately access. I wanted to do it for like State Highway 1 or something like that. I didn't have enough data to get the actual per billion VKTs, which is, per vehicle that goes through, what's their risk, rather than, because different volume of vehicles makes a different risk profile. But anyway, so no, they're not safe. And speed it's the reason. You can talk about differences in driver training and licensing and infrastructure on these. Speed just absolutely dominates everything. All right, that's probably a point I have to hand over before we get into just some points on the road network. I'll take questions while Loretta jumps into the learning management system, just to show you a very, very quick little quiz we want you to do before next session.
Thanks, Ken. There was one last question there from Tony, if you get a chance to read that one.
Okay.
Hopefully everyone can see my screens. I'll go through this. It won't take very long, because I have seen that most people have already logged into the learning management system. So with that login email that you received, just clicking on the login and you get to a dashboard where you will see your course. If you're doing multiple courses with us, you'll see a few others there, but of course you might only have the one that you're in today, Communicating Safe System Principles. So basically it's just working down the dashboard or the pages in regards to the welcome page. I know a lot of people have already introduced themselves, so have a read through, get to know everyone in the group. There are some resources in here as well. Ken may make some reference to certain things that will be included in this folder. But most importantly for today's session, there is a presentation in there, which is a PDF. So the presentation that Ken is running through, if your system fails, etc., you can follow through the PDF file, so you can click on there. But there is a quiz. So everything that we've covered today, a little quiz for you. So clicking on the quiz, you get up to 3 attempts. So if you get questions wrong, don't worry. They are majority multiple choice and true or false. So clicking on attempt quiz and quick admin question first, and then just following through the quiz, 10 questions. So yes, shouldn't take you too long, but you do have up to 3 attempts. So don't worry if you get them wrong. But that's all for the learning management system. As I said, if you haven't got your email to click or log in with your login details, shoot me an email at training and I'll give you some more info.
And
That's
I
it
will
from me.
start next session by talking about other countries' approach to speed limits and speed management, because we're just out of time on this session. Log in a little bit early before next session for a bit of trivia, chance to win a prize. Looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Thanks all. See you then.